PhD candidate at Fielding Graduate University. And this documentary looks at the intersections between art, activism, and scholarship. We look at how art can play a critical role in addressing social issues as well as in scholarship. I introduce you to two amazing female activists who are using art to mobilize social change in India with vulnerable communities, as well as my esteemed committee, who are all experts in their own field and have used art in their research and in their own lives. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you at the end.
I am Kalki Subramaniam. I'm a transgender rights activist, artist, poet, writer, and also I run an organization. I'm the founder of the organization called Sherwood Foundation, which was founded in 2008. We have been doing a lot of work. We use art and technology together for the empowerment of transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse population in India. We are one of the pioneering as well as only activism project from India that really addresses discrimination and social rejection, family rejection, and resists against violence against trans people. That's what Sahodri does. Besides that, I've completed my master's degree in journalism and mass communication, and also another master's in international relations. I've spoken at Harvard and lots of other universities across the world.
Hola, namaste. My name is Danny Khan de Silva. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and I am an Indian / South Asian / Portuguese woman who is a settler in so-called Canada. And my parents were both newcomers to this country. I am the executive director and founder of Photographers Without Borders. I am also a filmmaker, photographer, and storyteller. I also consider myself a land and water protector and somebody who is really passionate about documenting the connections that people and especially women have to Mother Earth. I'm also a Sony ambassador. I'm a National Geographic explorer. I have done 2 TED Talks.
I'm David Blake Willis. I am an anthropologist at Fielding Graduate University, and I suppose I'm an educational anthropologist or a comparative educator. And I taught anthropology and sociology at Sowai Buddhist University in Osaka, Japan, for 23 years, 1986, 2009. And then I joined Fielding Graduate University in 2008. In 2006-07, I was a senior associate member at the University of Oxford, did some teaching and research there. My books include Reimagining Japanese Education, and that's about borders, transfers, circulations, and the comparative, and Transcultural Japan at the Borders of Race, Gender, and Identity. So I'm very interested in border talk, creolization of cultures, and of course, social justice work, among other topics. More recently, Dalit liberation movements, Gandhi and Dalit liberation movements in South India.
I'm Jean-Pierre Isbouts, and I am a professor in the Fielding Graduate University's program of human development, the PhD program of human development. I'm a humanist and art historian, and I am particularly interested in looking at art in the way it fills a critical role in major transformative movements in history. I just finished a book called The History of the World. Believe it or not, it's a ridiculous title, for National Geographic.
So my name is Laura Lorenz, and I am co-founder and educator at Photo Voice Worldwide, which is a small women-owned business that I started in 2019. And I'm also a visiting research scholar at Brandeis University at the Heller School for Social Policy and Management, where I work with different faculty on research and papers and social justice sorts of issues. So I started using Photo Voice, hard to believe now, 21 years ago, as an arts-based method to put cameras in the hands of young people. At the time, I started working with young people to look at their community, reflect on things they saw there that they thought were positives or negatives, challenges, and develop exhibits, do outreach to get their ideas out to others, for example, policymakers. And it's just grown from there. I've used photo voice all over the world.
Hi, my name is Eliza Von Bayer, and I'm currently a PhD candidate at Fielding Graduate University. And I'm currently located in Ottawa, Canada. And art-based research is part of my dissertation. So I'm working with Tibetan women who have resettled here in Ottawa in the past 5 years. There was a special program that was put in place. My project falls under visual ethnography. It's sort of the umbrella methodology. And so the ethnographic pieces are that I've been working and socializing with the group of Tibetans, not just the women, but the whole group for 5 years. Visual ethnography is a methodology within arts-based research. Arts-based research is a huge umbrella of various methodologies and methods. The main reasons why it's important to bring the arts into research processes, research methods, is so that it's more of an equal playing field for participants. Many people talk about that arts-based research is great because it gives voice to participants. When you start looking into the research that talks about decolonizing methodologies, researchers and activists are saying, or research activists are trying to impart the fact that you should never be really looking at giving someone a voice, because that's still you as researcher holding all the power, giving away some of that power to participants to then share their stories with you. So arts-based research is kind of that first step away from the positivistic research methods of the past, and actually many people still use now. But there's a big push. There's been a big push since the 1990s, especially to really honor our participants and not just take their stories and conduct our research. That really to level that playing field and to work with participants in a more collaborative manner, really have them participate, like have that participatory element to the research.
I think that arts-based research has differing value in different contexts. And it's frustrating for me in my own work to have worked primarily in a context where numbers take priority. And number two, much lower in priority, is qualitative research, which relies on words. So arts-based research, I think, becomes an anathema. That people are confused, they don't know, they're not sure what it means or how to do it, so they kind of push it aside and put that emphasis on the numbers and maybe the words. And I feel that there is a growing interest in arts-based research, in narrative and storytelling that are not just words, but also art and a combination of art and words to create stories, such as the graphic narrative movement in medicine. And I feel that as younger people who are used to comics with meaning, and learning and studying and creating, for example, comic books with meaning, that attitude may change. And it's important to remember that policymakers often make decisions based on emotions, just like anybody else. So we can have all the statistics ready, we can have all our coded and analyzed data, but when you're telling stories and illustrating them with both visuals or art and words, then they can hear those stories and understand the importance or the essence of your findings in a way that may help prompt a decision, that they may be able to make that decision based on an emotion. They become motivated, and yet they may still be open to the statistics, but they really want to hear the stories.
Research, arts-based methods can be explosive in the sense of generating new approaches to society. The power of music, for example, in the civil rights movement of the United States in the 1950s and 60s was just amazing. It's still today, those songs are echoing for us. And, you see this with the visual arts as well, of course. The advantages are that it reaches people's hearts. We talk about, in social justice work, we talk about head, hearts, and hands. And the hands are the creation of the art, and then the head is the initial attraction to the art, and then it gets to the heart, and then it can generate action. Wow, art in my own life, it's of course, it's a major part of our lives. We either have music or, paintings and so on that are part of who we are, what we do on a daily basis. Reminders of the importance of that are, scattered around your house. You've got, framed paintings and so on all around. It's an ongoing thing too. It's like a river. To be human is to have art. And I also think that animals have art. I don't think, my goodness, you look at birds, for example, it's glorious colors.
Art is my life. I mean, when I went to university, I wanted to study art and architecture and archaeology. I couldn't make up my mind, so I did all three, and I did musicology as well, because I always felt that there was a great symbiosis between visual arts, performing arts, and architecture. They all respond to the same impulses from society, right?
I try to do art at some point every week. When my schedule's more relaxed, of course, I'm doing it more often. And I find that it's almost meditative. I can be in a different place and have a different focus when I'm doing art. I suppose it's rational, but it's often very intuitive, and I emphasize a more intuitive process when I do art. In fact, I often avoid trying to do anything exactly representational. I instead will force myself to use methods like watercolor that's much harder to control. So I can let an intuitive process take hold and not control it, and let that intuition guide me.
My interest in the arts has been since I was a little kid. I was always crafting and doodling. I still doodle to this day. There's a trance element to it. And sometimes, my brain's racing, but I'm trying to listen to a lecture, or I'm on a Zoom call or something, and, I'll doodle, and it keeps my brain, it helps me concentrate. I realized that making art was important to me, to my being, my stress relief, even. Like, it was so important to just be able to sit down and just become part of the flow of ripping paper and gluing paper and, getting the paints out and doing this, that, and the other thing. And so I really enjoyed that and have carried it forward. It's now part of what I do.
All societies in their educational systems have emphasis on the arts, because that's who we are, who they are, who we are. And that's what we need to see out there in the society, is that representation of who we are, symbolically, metaphorically, all of that. It's powerful, powerful. Limitations of arts-based methods for creating new knowledge. I think that the major limitation is when the portrayals are done in a narrow way, only focused on the particular aspects of the medium, rather than the connections with the larger society, the connections with, again, resistance. So that's, art for art's sake, which is a kind of nonsense, I'm sorry. It needs to be placed in a context, and it needs to be explained in a context.
I think art can have a social function. Of course it can. But it needs to speak the language that the people speak. It cannot go into all kinds of elitist ideas that are purely obvious to the artist, but not to the people, not to the audience, of creative expression that people can understand. Then you have to speak that language, that vocabulary. But unfortunately, people don't want to do it. They want to just pursue their own ideas, and yet art can do so much to advance social causes. 19th century France, which is when, in the Industrial Revolution, produced a wave of wealth for a very small elite of industrialists. The ruling classes saw themselves progressively marginalized because of the very turbulent political movements. And you see that artists cater to this escapism because cities became grimy, the smoke from factories. Cities became really very unhealthy places, right? Where the laborers toiled in factories. And so there was now a taste for Greco-Roman idyllic idea of French society as a place where genteel beauty can reign, and forget about these laborers toiling. Well, the Impressionists revolted against that. And what they did is that they went out and they painted shopkeepers, and washerwomen, and prostitutes, and people getting drunk in the bars, laborers who sit in the factory for 10 hours and then try to forget their toil with absinthe in a bar. That was a very clear social revolution. And as a result of that art, people became aware of the conditions in these factories. So the very base social stratum of workers were elevated as a subject of high art by the Impressionists.
So for me, art is important to social justice efforts because it's a different way of communicating. And when we put priority on words, that may mean we speak different languages, which makes it hard to communicate with each other. We may have different educational levels or different areas of expertise with their own language that also become barriers to respectful level or equal communication. However, with art, where we're all looking at something, a piece of art, some kind of art, and talking about it, the conversation is more respectful, more equal, and can lead to innovative ideas, I feel, in terms of identifying what problems there are, what strengths there are, and what solutions might be possible to address those problems or support those strengths. And finally, also in communication with policymakers or others who can make decisions, when there's art, it also helps trigger new thinking for them and perhaps a more openness in attitude because it's not just focused on words and numbers.
What's been interesting since the start of the pandemic is the mural art. So beginning of the pandemic and with the Black Lives Matter movement becoming so much more prominent, the activist element is coming into the mural art. There's messages that people are trying to impart, and they're using, the medium is the mural. The medium is the art that people are placing in public spaces. I'm noticing that there's more and more mural art happening in cities that really have strong activist roots to it. So right now there's a lot of guerrilla art and mural art that speaks to Black Lives Matter, defund the police. There's a mural that's an homage to George Floyd, and then pandemic related things. So, telling people to wear their masks and wash their hands and, don't be a mask hole and, like all that kind of stuff. And you're seeing that out in the community.
I'm intrigued by the idea of the arts as resistance in society. We see with Black Lives Matter in 2020, and of course the roots go back much deeper, a powerful emergence of Shakti, of the female energy. That's something that's been underrated and underestimated in the media accounts of Black Lives Matter. But 3 women founded it, and the energy and the power, I think, is reflective of a transformation of societies from a male-dominated point of view to one that has more of the power of the feminine, of the Shakti coming out.
I started painting when I was a child. I think I was like 12, 13 years old. And, because of being a trans woman, because of being a gender non-conforming kid, and being very feminine as a boy, I was very feminine. As a biological boy, I was very feminine. So I had a lot of bullying at school. Not only bullying, I also have harassment at school by fellow students as well, actually. So I used to escape. I used to really escape school sometimes, and I used to run to parks. I used to run to forests, sometimes to hide, sometimes to hide actually away from people, sometimes to be alone with nature, most times to be alone with nature, so that I could just celebrate who I am, acknowledge and accept who I am, and also express myself without being judged. Nature wouldn't judge me. So I would actually sit under the tree. I would start painting about what I wanted to be, how I will be as a woman when I grow up. And I would also start writing about how I feel, what is my life should be, my pain and all that. I started doing it. And that is how I actually started painting. As a child, that was my outlet because I had nobody to talk to. No, I had no friend whom I can talk to. So I spoke to the paper and the paint. I started speaking to, I started speaking through my paintings and drawings and through my poetry as a child. And that is how it became. And once I became an adult person, I just had to struggle so many years, for almost a decade and a half, to establish my identity as a respectable person in the society. So since transgender people are looked down upon for our identity, for being who we are, so I needed to be respected. So I had to go through a lot of struggles. Even though I studied better and I had a family acceptance, I did go through a lot of struggles. Eventually, when I succeeded as an activist, as an artist, I wanted to pick up my art. And that is how 3 years ago I started painting once again. And I found that it was just waiting for me. It was all inside, waiting to come out and celebrate. So I started doing artworks, and it was like I took every color in the palette and I started painting vigorously because I wanted to express myself in such a very rich, powerful, and in a vibrant way, because I think my personality is like that. So started painting vibrantly on the canvas, And all my paintings are very colorful. I always use a lot of layers of paint. Almost every color will be there in different shades in my painting. And I also found that it was absolutely healing for me, very, very healing for me. This work of art was personally healing for me. So it kind of took away my fear and, took away my insecurity. And I thought I should give this experience to my friends, our girls. So I started spreading out, I started the Trans Hearts project, um, through which I gave training workshops in visiting different cities in India and started giving training for transgender women in creating art. And so more than 100 transgender people have got training from me. I have more than 100 students right now. And many of them do their artworks when we do exhibitions in colleges, universities, and private galleries. And when people buy the artworks, I just give the money to our community people. So in a way, they are actually healing themselves through art as well as they are making money. So that is how Trans Hearts became. Actually, I found Trans Hearts in 2017 only. There is another project, it's Community Journalism Project. That is where we also used video media, photography media to express ourselves. And that actually started in 2010. Very early, we started using visual media, YouTube and blogging. Very early, we started using in India. And I mean, we were the first and the only pioneering organizations in India, Sahodri was, in taking our stories to people through videos and media.
My father's side is from India and my mother's side is from Portugal. And I've always been aware of being something different, something exotic, something other, whilst growing up in so-called Canada. I've always been made to aware that I have a different skin color, that my parents have different last names, mostly as a result of growing up in a very white neighborhood. My grandmother was married off at the age of 13 to my grandfather during partition because my great grandfather was trying to help save her. During partition, there was a lot of violence, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of rape, especially of Muslim women in the region that my family was in. And so he married her off and she never saw him again. And she moved from India to Karachi, to Saudi Arabia, to England, to finally Canada, where her and my grandfather settled. She remembers her father as being a judge, a lawyer, someone who wrote books, who was educated. She had a pony, and he was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's pretty much all I know about him. And so for me, going to India wasn't just about trying to put my international development degree to work, but it was a self-exploration. And I had the opportunity to work with a community-led initiative. You see, I didn't understand before going to India that the caste system was still so much part of Indians' day-to-day lives. And the Dalit people, unfortunately, still to this day suffer the most. Seeing a community-led initiative that was facilitating the needs of the community in a really grassroots way, really, to me, was in contrast to the way I saw five-star development projects working and operating. And I felt like this was a project that was really working on minimal resources, but with so much creativity. And that's what struck me. And so I wanted to support this initiative. And all I could do really was make photographs. I was helping every day with sorting, medications and going to the mobile medical units and doing whatever I could that way to help. But the photography and the storytelling was what ended up being the most help, because when I was finished with that project, I asked, how can I serve you? How can we collaborate? How can I continue to, advocate for your organization? And they said, we really need schools for the children. so that they have a more dignified space to learn in than on the floor, on the dirt. And so I did that. And it was through the photographs that I was able to raise enough money to help build 9 schools in those communities. And that's really where the idea for Photographers Without Borders came from. It was from that project. And so that one initiative turned into many initiatives. And here we are today, where we're working with more than 40 projects every year. In more recent years, I came to develop a relationship with an organization called Sambali Trust, and with the founder, my good friend Govind Singh Rathore. And what I see them as doing in terms of their work is to really facilitate the growth of durgas, of goddesses, enabling women and girls to really embrace their own sovereignty and to rise up, essentially, like an eagle. And again, wanting to continue supporting the work that they do at Sambali Trust, we started to have workshops facilitated with Sambali. It's a great opportunity for us to support the organization annually through ongoing photography for their social media. And it's also a great way to fundraise for them. And it's a great way to spread awareness and bring in new advocates for them. So it's a really great program that really works for everybody. The very first program that they started was an arts and crafts project, and that quickly grew into a sewing project. The program that they created that really is at the core of the work they do is the graduate program, where they train a cohort of women every year to be able to use sewing machines and to take a sewing machine home, where she can then continue having her own business. She can have her own shop, or she can even work at the boutique that Sambali has, and where they employ some of the best sewers to create orders for their customers, whether they be international or local. Apart from that, they also have other programs where they teach children. They go into schools and teach children about, their bodies and sexual assault, and like how to ask for help, which is really, I would say, revolutionary in that community. They work with the LGBTQ community and support them in different ways, which is very important, I think, especially in Jodhpur. And they work with young girls. They provide schooling and education for young girls from the villages where there's a lot of child marriage and things like that, and even femicide. And they have boarding homes for them where they can stay in the city and have that quality education. And they just continue every year to bring on more and more projects and more amazing impact. Like, being aware of my positionality first and foremost is really important in this space and for every storyteller, because it allows me to be more aware that I have these blind spots. Like I said earlier, I didn't grow up in India. Just being Indian doesn't give me a pass into understanding fully, what it's like for an Indian person, let alone a Dalit person. So being an advocate can be all well and good, but, really trying to also become cognizant of and make it a lifelong process of learning and unlearning that we sometimes cannot see or understand necessarily. But the goal is to listen, right? And really being or striving to be an ally or striving to be an advocate is it means listening and being willing to, compromise even on your own values sometimes, or to be willing to be open to shift, right? There's a lot that I've learned from Indian women and Indian men. And I think that there's a lot more listening to be done for us to get to a place where we can really see each other. Change is the only constant in this world. And so where are we going, and what kind of change are we asking for? Are we even asking? Are we daring to envision beyond what is to what's possible? Or are we just rowing a giant slave ship as the big white paternal captain decides our course? We cannot go to the places we dream of if we cannot first see them in our mind's eye. This is why art is so important, and yes, even art for art's sake. Art's purpose is to give us the space and the freedom for possibility to exist. Art invites us into different worlds to reflect and reimagine, and to tell stories that bring us closer to our imagined horizons. Where are we going? What stories will get us there? Because through story, everything can change in an instant. Change the storyteller, change the story, change the world. Those are my reflections.
Just wrote art, heart, knowledge, hope, change, life. Just some random words that came into my mind. I think the purpose of this research, as I understand, and as everyone in the video speaks, is of course, it's all about beyond just self-healing, beyond just enjoying making art. It's also, the purpose is to make a change within oneself and change a society or a group of people. So I think in that way, everyone makes a change. I make it through my art journey in my, with the transgender community, I do. And you do it in a different way, of course, through academics. And Danielle does it with the camera and with her project with different people, of course. So I think everything is art. And I think we all do it with our heart. And that's our knowledge, which is for hope and which is for change. And that's all about life, our lives, all the participants' lives, you and me and Daniel and everyone. We have a purpose to live, a purpose to do things, and we do things with the medium of art. Yeah, your intention is to actually show our work, and I think I'm very, very grateful for that, because your purpose, of course, in this research is bringing to the world and to the academics what we really do, because you think it's worth it. And I'm very thankful to you for that.
In conclusion, I'd like to thank Kalki and Danielle for their ongoing support and their contribution to this documentary and throughout my research. I just want to honor the amazing work that they are doing in the community, and just really emphasize how important that work is. And it really shows how art can really benefit social justice causes and help elevate the voices of communities that are traditionally not heard. I think we can see through this documentary and the work that both Danielle and Kalki are doing, how arts-based methods such as visual storytelling can address critical social issues and access knowledge that otherwise might not be available. My intention behind this documentary was to emphasize how art can impact social change, as well as be used as a research method throughout, from data inquiry to data analysis, in addition to being able to share the knowledge outside the academy. In closing, I'd like to thank my committee for their ongoing support and willingness to participate in this documentary. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.